Today we are going to deal with payments to consultants in general. Introduction. Lot of government departments and private entities do appoint outside consultants to do both design and supervision of their projects. This is one area generally not given much attention during technical auditing. Some norms are required to see the consultant and client do not get unjust profit. But consultant payment procedure for design works is usually as follows. The government department or private institution have a payment arrangement for design works for consultants. It is advisable to make interim payment arrangement for design to consultant on the lines of percentage upon submission of preliminary studies, percentage upon submission of preliminary design, percentage upon approval of preliminary design, percentage upon submission of final design, percentage upon approval of draft final design, then percentage upon submission of final design. Total is 100%. Period. Preliminary studies, say 20 days. Preliminary design, say 30 days. Draft final design, say 25 days. Final design, say 20 days. Approval shall be given 14 days upon submission. These periods for design, preliminary studies, preliminary design, final design, draft final design and final design, sometimes for some projects can be longer. Consultants have their own payment arrangements with private clients. They always insist in receiving their payment upfront. For example, 25% of the design fee in advance, supervision fee to be paid at the beginning of the month, and receipt of payment should be within 1 week from the date of invoice, etc. If a consultant working for a big public established company, it is likely that their procurement or HR department may have a specific billing schedule. Then it is better to follow this procedure, as they always make payments clockwork, as they have the system and processes in place already. Consultant fees for supervision. There is no standard for reporting procedures by the consultant during the implementation of a project. Each consultant has his own standard. Usually there will be a weekly meeting followed by monthly commercial meeting for major projects. All the records of meetings are generally copied to all attendees. There are instances when the contract is adjourned owing to various reasons, such as the contractor delays and the consultant or client delays, etc. In such cases, the consultant also proceeds as usual for an unlimited period, costing the client heavily. The contractor final account and subsequent closeout of the project also take a very long time, creating unnecessary burden for the contractor. Unlike design or similar works, there is no limit to the payment for the consultant supervision. When the project duration extends, the consultant's supervision fees also increase. There is a necessity for some basic standards for consultant supervision fees. One way of controlling fees for consultant is to fix a lump sum for a project with a project team and a specified period. 2.1. Supervision team and their duration to be fixed. Each project to have an approved supervision team with the approved salaries and duty and durations. 2.2. Finalization of project accounts and project closeout. If the project is a remeasure type, then finalization of measurements, variation and claims to be a continuous process with the commencement and a program such as Substructure measurement to be completed on or before some date. Block work measurement to be completed on or before some date. Rebar calculation to be finalized on or before some date. Mechanical works to be completed on or before some date. Status of variation, non-approved, numbers yet to be approved, status of contractor claims. 2.3. Consultant report on substantial completion date and the end of the defects liability period. In addition to other reports, the consultant would prepare two reports as follows. 1. A report on scheduled completion date. If there is no delay, then the report should deal regarding the finalization of the accounts and the project closeout. In the event of delay in the project completion, the report should give details of work completed to date, contractor's payable amount to date, the balance work, approximate cost of sale, the detail of dispute to date, and recommend solution, the expected duration to complete the project, and the reasons for the delay in detail. B. A report on the end of the defects liability period. It has been observed that most, if not all, contracts do not have provision for decennial liability period. Thus, the client does not have any provision in the contract for charging the contractor for any correction or defects after the defects liability period. This is a serious problem in government-funded projects, as they incur more anticipated maintenance charges. Most of the latent defects shall come to light upon proper inspection at the end of the defects liability period. There are cases in African countries that certain contractors in government projects forego their second retention and do not do the required correction. So much so that some contractors do not consider this as a fraud but simply a way of doing business. This is a clear indication of substandard work during construction. However, there is good news in this aspect from the report on the subject of rethinking of construction published by the Department of Trade and Industry in the United Kingdom. The report stated that there is much evidence to suggest that the goal of zero defects is achievable across the construction within 5 years. The report further adds that some UK clients and US construction firms already regularly achieve zero defects on handover. The report, among others, should clearly state whether the defects were of the usual wear and tear of the structure or due to other factors such as substandard material or workmanship. B. Checking the proper functioning of all systems and fittings. C. Any settlement of structural cracks, etc. D. Corrective action that are required and the approximate cost of sale. The defect liability certificate should only be issued after the correction of all defects. 2. Control on travel expenses to consultant for site visit. It is noticed that travel expenses are sometimes higher than the consultant fees owing to the appointment of consultant from other areas. Travel expenses should be limited to a maximum of 10% of the consultant fee. 2.5. Consultants should not be allowed to receive sale proceeds of the tender documentation. Some of the banks and public sector undertakings allow the consultant to invite tenders on behalf of the organization. Consultants sometimes charge very high amount for tender documents and keep the sale proceeds with them. This is not correct. these amounts should be given back to the client. Supervision after scheduled completion. Projects are usually not completed as planned. The staff level required for such period is much lower than the original requirements. The program to be prepared at the end of the scheduled period as to how much more time under required for the supervision staff. 2.7. Payment for provisional sums. The provisional sum other contingency sum to be deleted in the consultant's fee calculation as there is no input from the consultant for sale. In the event if there are any input given by the consultant, then this should be paid based on reasonable allocated resources with pre-approved rates. Professional indemnity insurance by client. All consultants to have sufficient cover for professional indemnity insurance. The cover should include for professional negligence. Thank you.